Hey guys, tonight we drift way back, before Zeus, before the Titans, before even the idea of before made sense. Imagine yourself floating in nothing, where there isn't even a color to see, because light hasn't been invented yet. You're suspended in the softest possible darkness, the kind that isn't threatening, it's just blank. And somewhere in that endless hush, a cosmic yawn called chaos stirs. It doesn't roar or flash, it simply is. And from that lazy, swirling emptiness, the first beings emerge without really meaning to. You probably won't survive this if you try to imagine it too hard. Your brain likes beginnings, not the absence of them. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drift closer to chaos. It's not evil, not good. It's more like the universe before someone remembered to put up walls. Out of this murky calm comes Gaia, the earth herself, solid and wide and strangely motherly from the first heartbeat. Then comes Tartarus, the deep abyss below her, a kind of basement for cosmic misfits. And Eros appears too, not yet the mischievous cherub, but pure desire itself, the gentle push that makes things combine, connect, and multiply. Some ancient poet said night, Nyx, and darkness, Erebus, slipped out next, quiet twins who taught everything else how to hide. Historians still argue whether chaos was truly a being or just a poetic excuse for we don't know what happened before this. You feel the first boundaries take shape, light and dark, high and low, love and void. It's the start of a family tree that never asks your opinion before growing. Gaia stretches her back and sighs. She's alone, but creative. She births Uranus, the sky, to cover her like a shimmering blanket. When his blue expanse settles over her curves, she feels complete for about 2 seconds before realizing he never stops pressing down. Out of boredom or biology, historians still can't decide which. Gaia and Uranus create their first generation, the Titans. 12 of them, though you stop counting around 7 because their names start to blend: Oceanus, Coeus, Creus, Hyperion, Iapetus, Thea, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, Tethys, and Cronus. You can almost hear them stretching as they emerge, each more dramatic than the last. They are enormous, elemental, and already tired of their parents' weird relationship. Gaia's womb never really closes. She keeps creating giants, cyclopes, and those unsettling hecatoncheires with 100 hands each. You picture the family dinner table, too many elbows, constant thunderous chewing. But Uranus isn't thrilled with all this life. He shoves the uglier kids back inside Gaia, into her depths. You feel the ache, her pain becoming literal mountain ranges. The myth says she groaned and plotted revenge, but you imagine it more like an exhausted sigh from every mom who's ever said, "Fine, I'll do it myself." The fringe tidbit here? Some ancient Orphic versions claim Gaia's groaning formed the first human heartbeat, a mythic echo that we all carry, like a faint background hum under our ribs. As chaos watches, utterly unhelpful, you drift along this awkward household. Uranus hovers above, stubbornly refusing to move. Gaia tries to stretch, to breathe. The Titans grow restless in the dark, whispering about freedom. The air itself thickens with rebellion. It's strange how the universe, even at its most newborn, already knows about disappointment. You pass through centuries that feel like minutes. The Titans finally emerge into their own space, glowing faintly in the primordial dawn. Hyperion's light burns first. He's the father of future sun gods, and Oceanus starts to flow around everything, inventing the first rivers just so he can pace while thinking. Gaia watches them like a weary teacher whose students are far too enthusiastic about chaos. You notice how mythology sneaks in repetition. It likes patterns the way waves like shorelines. Sky and earth create children. Children rebel. A new order rises. Then it starts all over again. Maybe that's the real secret of these stories. They weren't just told to explain the world, but to make its endless cycles feel almost manageable. Back in the void's fading silence, you sense chaos slipping into the background, content now that creation has momentum. Some myths claim chaos gave birth to time itself. Chronos, not to be confused with Cronus. Yes, the Greeks loved confusing everyone. Others suggest time was always there, waiting, quietly aging everything without permission. Historians still argue whether Chronos and Cronus were originally the same figure who later got split by storytelling convenience. You smile at the idea, divine identity theft at a cosmic scale. As you hover, you feel how heavy the universe becomes once families enter the picture. Gaia's body groans beneath mountains and oceans, while Uranus sulks above, refusing to lift a single celestial finger. There's a kind of sleepy inevitability to it all, the moment before conflict when even the stars seem to hold their breath. And you, drifting in this dreamlike myth, start to notice how creation sounds. The low murmur of rivers forming, the sigh of winds finding direction, the distant crackle of fire tasting oxygen for the first time. The universe doesn't begin with a bang. It begins with a yawn and a stretch. Somewhere deep inside Gaia's belly, one titan opens his eyes. Cronus, the youngest but sharpest. He listens to his mother's muffled complaints and begins to imagine alternatives. But that story is still brewing. For now, you float above the newborn earth, where every mountain is a bruise and every cloud is a secret. You can almost smell the raw minerals in the air, like wet stone after rain, though rain hasn't been invented yet. The whole place feels half-finished, a divine work in progress. And as Gaia hums softly to calm herself, that hum becomes the heartbeat of the world. You realize that from this sleepy, slow beginning, 1,000 generations of gods, heroes, and mortals will stumble, argue, and fall in love, all thanks to one tired mother and one overbearing sky. The void fades behind you. The family tree has begun to sprout, and you're perched on its very first branch, gently swaying between nothingness and everything. You drift closer to Gaia now, the Earth Mother herself, who's clearly the busiest being in early existence. She has continents to raise, seas to pour, and the whole matter of inventing gravity, because apparently nothing stays put yet. You watch her stretch, groan, and exhale mountains. Every tremor that runs through her belly becomes a new creature or landform. She's not just the ground you walk on, she's the reason there is ground. And while she's majestic, she also looks a little frazzled, like someone who agreed to host a party that never ends. The myths say Gaia's job list keeps growing faster than she can tick boxes. She starts with the basics, land, sea, sky. But soon, she's birthing children that represent every corner of creation. From her come the titans, the cyclopes, the 100-handed giants, the seas themselves. You could call her prolific, but honestly, she's more like the first multitasker in the universe. Every new child is another chunk of reality, and you can tell she's doing it all without coffee. The air feels thicker now, damp, fertile, humming with newness. You can smell minerals and salt, hear the first streams trickle, though they have no names yet. Somewhere deep under her surface, the titans stir, restless in their mother's vast body. They're enormous, but they're also still kids, confused, half asleep, and perpetually hungry. Gaia, patient as she is, starts to get a little tired of being the universe's only caregiver. Above her, Uranus is still glued to the sky position, sprawling across her surface like a suffocating weighted blanket. He's beautiful, sure, with shimmering blues and silvers, but he's also a bit of a control freak. Every time Gaia gives birth to a new being, Uranus pushes them back inside her, literally. You imagine the sound of that, like mountains grinding against each other. Historians still argue whether this part of the myth was meant to symbolize genealogy or just the Greek tendency for extreme parenting metaphors. Gaia starts to ache. The pain isn't just physical, it's cosmic cabin fever. She wants space, a little breathing room between earth and sky. But Uranus is firm, unmoving, proud, and that's when she decides to do something about it. Not a tantrum exactly, more like divine problem solving. She forges a tool, a great curved sickle made from the hardest material she can find, adamant, the mythical metal that doesn't bend or break. She doesn't say much while she works, just hums softly, like the vibration of tectonic plates. When the sickle is ready, she calls her children. The titans gather, their giant faces flickering in the half-light. One by one, she asks for help, but most turn away. They've seen their father's power. They know how loud the sky can thunder when angry. Finally, the youngest, Cronus, steps forward. He's not the biggest or the strongest, but he's ambitious and curious, and if we're being honest, just a little resentful. "Mother," he says, in that deep, slow Titan voice that sounds like shifting stone, "what would you have me do?" Gaia explains her plan, her voice like rolling thunder under your feet. She'll lure Uranus close, and when the moment comes, Cronus will strike. It's family therapy by way of sharp metal. The myths don't tell you how long they wait, maybe centuries, but when Uranus finally lowers himself onto Gaia again, Cronus acts. He wields the sickle, and in one brutal sweep, he cuts his father away from the earth forever. The deed is quick, but echoes endlessly. And here's the weird, almost poetic detail you never learned in school. From Uranus's severed remains that fall into the sea, the foam swirls and thickens until Aphrodite, goddess of love, rises from it. Beauty born from a breakup, its peak Greek mythology. Historians still argue whether this version came before or after other regional myths of love deities, but either way, it's pretty on brand. Now Uranus drifts upward, wounded but alive, becoming the sky as we know it, distant, unreachable, forever hovering above his children. Cronus stands tall, holding the sickle still dripping with symbolic victory, and Gaia finally breathes freely. Her pain quiets, replaced by the low hum of rivers and wind. You can almost feel her relief spreading through every stone and root. But this new calm doesn't last, because once you start a family feud in Greek myth, it becomes a generational sport. Cronus and the Titans claim their father's throne, declaring a new age, the Golden Age, they call it later. It's peaceful, productive, and kind of boring in a good way. Crops grow easily, animals behave, and mortals, if they exist yet, live without fear. But if you look closely at Cronus, you can already see a hint of paranoia flickering behind his amber eyes. There's a prophecy, whispered maybe by Gaia, maybe by fate itself, that one day Cronus will be overthrown by his own child, just as he overthrew his father. You'd think he'd see the irony. Instead, he sees danger. The Greek gods are nothing if not predictable in their family insecurities. Meanwhile, the rest of Gaia's kids keep busy. Oceanus wraps the world in water, creating the first global boundary line. Hyperion and Theia give birth to the sun, moon, and dawn, which is a decent resume for a mythic couple. Themis invents law and order, while Mnemosyne creates memory itself. A nice reminder that without her, none of this story could be told. The Titans aren't just family. They're functions of the world, and Gaia's to-do list is finally getting shorter. And yet, you can sense her melancholy. She's proud, yes, but she's also seen what happens when power gets passed down. She's watched the cycle begin: birth, rebellion, reign, and fall. Maybe that's why her hum has changed. Less melody, more weary rhythm, like waves lapping endlessly at a shore. If you close your eyes, you can almost feel that rhythm beneath your pillow. Each heartbeat syncs with the pulse of the world she built. It's steady, patient, and eternal. Gaia's story isn't the loudest in Greek myth, but it's the foundation under all the noise. Without her, no thrones, no storms, no jealous gods, just silence. You drift with her breath through the cool, dark soil where roots twist like veins. The Titans sleep nearby, dreaming their heavy dreams, unaware that their age of gold will rust soon enough. Above, Uranus glows faintly, his endless sky finally a safe distance away. And in the quiet between them, Gaia whispers, not words, just the soft reassurance that the world, for now, is balanced. You're floating again, but this time the air feels heavier, like the sky itself is watching you. That's not paranoia. It's Uranus, the sky dad, still brooding after his rather dramatic dethroning. He's been separated from Gaia now, high above her, stretching endlessly across the heavens. You can almost hear the bitter wind that carries his resentment. Somewhere below, the Titans wander their new kingdom, adjusting to the whole ruling the cosmos thing. Cronus may have freed them, but freedom comes with chores, and divine chores never end. Uranus doesn't forget easily. He sulks in starlight, and whenever the wind howls at night, it's said to be him whispering curses. He hates that his children walk on the earth while he must stay distant, forced to be both everywhere and nowhere. Historians still argue whether Uranus was ever truly considered a personality, or just a poetic way of saying the sky's mad tonight. Either way, you can feel his sulky presence lingering in the upper atmosphere like unspent lightning. Down below, Gaia moves a little slower these days. She's recovered from childbirth and rebellion, but now she's caught between guilt and relief. Cronus, her youngest, has taken charge, and though she wanted change, she can already sense that his rule will not bring the peace she hoped for. The Titans are like toddlers in charge of a toy store, powerful, unsupervised, and prone to tantrums. Cronus, meanwhile, is adjusting to being king of the cosmos. He's tall, golden, and careful with words, though he's not big on empathy. You watch him sit on his stone throne, his mother's sickle leaning against the wall, a trophy he doesn't quite know what to do with. The other Titans gather around him: Oceanus, the calm one, Hyperion, the radiant, and Rhea, his sister and future queen, who watches him with a mixture of admiration and growing concern. The world during their reign feels orderly, but still raw, like wet clay. The rivers flow steadily, Mountains settle into their shapes, and time, strangely enough, starts to feel linear. Cronus rules over it all with quiet efficiency. People later call it the Golden Age, a time when mortals, if there are any yet, live peacefully, untouched by hunger or war. But under that golden surface lies something colder, Cronus's fear. You can sense it even as he smiles, his paranoia, sharp and constant. The prophecy about his downfall gnaws at him. He doesn't talk about it, but it shows in small ways. The way his eyes dart toward the heavens, the way he tightens his grip on that sickle whenever thunder rumbles above. You can almost hear Uranus laughing faintly in the distance, a hollow echo bouncing between the stars. One night, Cronus dreams. In his dream, a voice, maybe Gaia's, maybe Fate's, whispers, "As you did to your father, so shall your son do to you." He wakes up sweating starlight. From that moment, every sound of new life unsettles him. Every whisper of birth feels like betrayal. You can practically see him pacing, counting possibilities like a paranoid accountant of destiny. The Titans' families start to grow. Hyperion and Theia have their luminous children, Helios the sun, Selene the moon, and Eos the dawn. Themis brings forth the fates and the hours, those quiet clock-like daughters who keep everything on schedule. And Rhea, well, Rhea becomes pregnant. That's when Cronus's anxiety tips into full cosmic micromanagement. He loves Rhea, sure, but love and fear make a messy cocktail. When their first child, Hestia, is born, Cronus does something that would make any therapist retire early. He swallows her, whole. He doesn't chew, he just gulps her down like a vitamin of paranoia. Rhea screams, Gaia groans, and the prophecy smirks somewhere in the dark. Cronus insists he's doing what's necessary. If I keep them safe inside me, he rationalizes, they can't grow up and overthrow me. That's logic only a Titan could love. Rhea, understandably, is horrified. Still, she stays silent, for now. When the second child, Demeter, is born, Cronus repeats the ritual, swallowing her too. Then comes Hera, then Hades, then Poseidon. One by one, he eats them like symbolic snacks, until Rhea's laughter turns brittle and her eyes start to harden. Historians still argue whether Cronus's devouring symbolizes time consuming all things. After all, Chronos, time, sounds almost identical to Cronus. Some say that's a linguistic coincidence. Others think the Greeks just liked their metaphors dark and edible. Either way, you can imagine the unease around Olympus. Oh, sorry, not Olympus yet, but the lofty hills where the Titans live. No one invites Cronus to baby showers anymore. Meanwhile, Gaia's patience cracks. She can't watch another generation suffer from her family's bad communication habits. She meets with Rhea secretly, whispering plans beneath ancient trees whose roots tremble with gossip. The earth itself seems to side with them, promising protection for what's to come. You, standing quietly nearby, can feel the first stirrings of rebellion again. It's not loud yet. It's a lullaby of inevitability. The cycle is about to repeat, just as Gaia predicted. Sky Father, Earth Mother, ambitious son, swallowed children. It's mythological déjà vu. The difference this time is that hope doesn't come from the heavens. It comes from a cave. But that's for later. For now, Cronus rules. He wears a crown forged from gold dust and hubris. The Titans still hold their feasts, drinking nectar and pretending the swallowed children aren't missing from the table. Oceanus raises a toast. Themis looks politely away, and Rhea forces a smile so brittle it could crack a mountain. Every once in a while you hear the faintest rumble from inside Cronus. 5 divine heartbeats, still alive, still waiting. They pulse in rhythm with the turning of the world, reminders that nothing stays contained forever. You imagine the sound like a muffled drum beneath the skin of the cosmos. Cronus doesn't notice, or pretends not to. Maybe he's convinced himself that if he ignores fate long enough, it'll get bored and leave. Spoiler, it won't. For now you hover between earth and sky, watching the uneasy calm stretch like fabric about to tear. The stars blink above you, Uranus's eyes maybe, and the wind sighs through Gaia's mountains. Everything feels still but charged, like that hush before a thunderstorm. Somewhere, Rhea's belly stirs again. Somewhere, the prophecy smiles. The air is thick tonight, like the sky itself is holding its breath. You're drifting over a world that seems peaceful on the surface, but underneath, the ground hums with tension. Cronus sits on his great throne of stone and starlight, king of the Titans, lord of everything that isn't nailed down. Around him, his siblings live in uneasy harmony, pretending that swallowing your children is just one of those quirky divine habits. But the silence in Rhea's eyes says otherwise. You can feel it. Rebellion is ripening again, like fruit on a branch that can't hold the weight much longer. Rhea has had enough. Watching 5 of her children vanish into her husband's mouth was one betrayal too many. And now she's pregnant again. This time, though, she isn't just waiting for destiny to happen. She's planning. You can almost see her walking the edges of Gaia's forests, whispering to the earth, to the stones, to the air itself. Gaia listens, of course. The Earth Mother never forgets a good revenge plot. Gaia and Rhea meet in secret beneath the spreading branches of an ancient oak that hums with divine memory. The plan is simple but bold. When this 6th child is born, Rhea won't hand him over to Cronus. Instead, they'll hide the baby somewhere safe, far from his father's paranoia. In his place, Cronus will get something else, something less noisy and significantly less divine. You glide beside Rhea as she travels to Crete, her feet barely touching the rocky slopes. The island is still wild then, all sharp cliffs and soft caves, the air thick with salt and promise. She finds a cavern on Mount Dicte, shadowy and deep, and there she gives birth to Zeus. The baby's first cry echoes softly, almost shyly, but it feels like thunder in miniature. Rhea cradles him, trembling with a mix of joy and dread. Gaia sends helpers, of course, because every good myth needs magical babysitters. There's Amalthea, the gentle goat whose milk nourishes the godling, and the Curetes, fierce young warriors who perform a noisy dance outside the cave, clanging their shields so Cronus can't hear the infant's cries. It's the first recorded example of noise-canceling technology in history. Meanwhile, Rhea returns to her husband, carrying a bundle wrapped in swaddling cloth. Cronus, suspicious as always, demands the child. Rhea hands it over, her face an expressionless mask carved from marble. Cronus gulps the bundle whole, stone and all, without noticing the difference. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic, representing the blindness of tyranny, or if Cronus was just really bad at chewing. The stone, later known as the omphalos, will eventually be placed at Delphi, marking what the Greeks believed to be the center of the world. A nice touch for a rock that once played the role of baby decoy. That's your quirky tidbit for this section, Ancient Geopolitics, brought to you by Divine Deception. Now, the world waits. Rhea's secret has shifted the rhythm of time. The Titans keep ruling, unaware that a baby is growing strong in a cave, fed on honey and goat's milk, lulled to sleep by the crash of Mediterranean waves. You hover nearby, watching little Zeus stretch his tiny fists, already glowing faintly with power. Every storm, every spark, every flash of light that flickers across the young sky feels like him practicing. Years pass, though time's weird here, soft and lazy, like it hasn't learned discipline yet. Zeus grows fast, nurtured by nature itself. Sometimes he climbs to the cave mouth, squinting at the world he'll someday inherit. Other times he listens to the curette's rhythm, learning the steady cadence of courage. You can almost hear his thoughts. One day I'll go home. One day I'll free them. Cronus, oblivious, continues his reign. The golden age rolls on, but it's starting to tarnish. The Titans grow restless, bored with perfection. Oceanus murmurs about the seas being too calm. Hyperion misses the thrill of creation. Even Themis, goddess of order, sighs at the monotony. Cronus tries to ignore the cracks, though sometimes, late at night, he swears he hears a baby's cry echoing in the wind. You can almost pity him, almost. Power without trust is its own kind of prison. He's king, yes, but he's also terrified, unable to relax even when everything's quiet. Every meal, every whisper, every gust of wind feels like a threat. He sharpens the sickle again, though there's no one left to strike. Down in Crete, Zeus has become a young man, sharp-eyed and sure-footed. He's been raised not just to survive, but to remember. Gaia tells him stories through the tremors in the ground, how his father overthrew his grandfather, how the cycle of fear keeps repeating. Zeus listens, patient. You can sense something different in him, not innocence exactly, but ambition tempered with humor. He laughs easily, but it's the kind of laugh that hides storms behind it. When the time finally comes, Rhea and Gaia call him back. The moment is quiet but heavy with purpose. Rhea explains what Cronus did, what still beats faintly inside his stomach. Zeus listens without flinching. Then I'll make him spit them out, he says simply. No theatrics, no shouting, just that calm certainty that tends to precede major mythological shakeups. He returns to Cronus's court disguised as a humble cupbearer. Cronus doesn't recognize him. Why would he? Titans rarely notice anything smaller than a mountain. Zeus pours his father a special drink, spiced with herbs Gaia herself provided. It's the first divine emetic in recorded myth. The effect is immediate. Cronus doubles over, roaring as his golden throat convulses. One by one, out come Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Grown now, unharmed, and extremely confused, they tumble to the ground like newborn stars, blinking at the light. The prophecy, at last, has come to collect. You can almost see the look on Cronus's face, half horror, half indigestion, all disbelief. For the first time, the Titan King realizes that the cycle he tried so hard to stop has already begun again. And Zeus, standing before him with calm, lightning-bright eyes, smiles just slightly, the same way Gaia did before forging that sickle. Historians still argue whether this moment marks the start of the Olympian era or just the continuation of Titan rule under new management. Either way, it's clear the universe is shifting again. The throne that once belonged to Uranus, then to Cronus, is about to find its new owner. But that's a battle still waiting to happen. For now, Zeus stands surrounded by his siblings, the air buzzing faintly with thunder that hasn't yet learned to sound like thunder. Rhea watches from afar, a rare, quiet smile touching her lips. Gaia's hum deepens, satisfied. You take one last look at the sky, Uranus still glowering, but maybe, secretly, impressed, and the earth below, pulsing with anticipation. The family tree is about to grow new branches, and none of them will stay still for long. Cronus's throne doesn't look so stable anymore. You can see cracks in the stone, fine as spider silk, spreading from the place where his fingers grip the armrests. The 5 children he swallowed, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, stand before him now, grown and dazed, still slick with the golden glow of rebirth. They blink at their father with a kind of polite disbelief, the way you might look at someone who's just admitted to eating you for preventive reasons. Zeus doesn't say much. He doesn't need to. His very presence hums with quiet voltage. You can smell ozone around him, like the air before a summer storm. Cronus glares down from his throne, but he feels the shift. His children aren't helpless anymore. They're divine adults, born twice, once from Rhea and once from revenge. Rhea hovers near the back of the hall, her hands trembling, unsure whether to feel proud or terrified. Gaia's voice rumbles softly beneath their feet, reminding everyone that this moment was always coming. The prophecy didn't predict a fight, it promised a pattern. Still, the fight is coming anyway, because that's how this family solves its issues, loudly. Cronus stands, his shadow spilling like dusk across the marble. "You think you can rule what I built?" he growls, his voice low and gravelly, like boulders grinding together. Zeus doesn't flinch. "You built a cage," he says. "We're here to open it." Historians still argue whether this exchange ever appeared in early texts, or if it's a later poetic flourish, but either way, it feels right. You can almost hear the collective sigh of the cosmos. Here we go again. The first clash between generations doesn't happen immediately. Zeus knows he can't win alone. He and his siblings retreat to Mount Olympus, where they start planning. You follow them through the clouds, the air crisp and restless. The 6 siblings sit around a rough stone table, sparks flickering whenever Zeus moves his hands. Hades is quiet, watching shadows crawl along the cave walls. Poseidon drums his fingers in rhythm with distant waves. Hera keeps trying to organize everyone, which will become a lifelong habit. They know they'll need allies. The Titans are powerful, numerous, and experienced in cosmic warfare. But Gaia, ever the strategist, reminds Zeus of the forgotten children, the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires, the 100-handed giants still trapped in Tartarus. Cronus imprisoned them ages ago, just like Uranus once did. "Free them," Gaia whispers through the earth, "and they'll fight for you." So Zeus descends. You trail him through the darkness of Tartarus, that deep, echoing abyss beneath everything. It's not fiery like later stories make it. It's cold, thick, timeless. The air smells of iron and forgotten things. When Zeus reaches the prison gates, he raises his hand, and lightning blooms, his first real strike, the moment thunder learns its name. The chains melt like wax. The Cyclopes emerge, blinking, massive, grateful. They hand him gifts in return for their freedom: thunder, lightning, and the thunderbolt itself, sharp as judgment and bright as truth. It's one of those turning points that sound small in retelling, but feel enormous when you're standing there. The world, for the first time, has a real storm. Zeus brings his new allies back to his siblings. The Hecatoncheires, all 100 arms apiece, join as well, their movements like a whirlwind of fists. The 6 Olympians look tiny beside them, but their confidence grows. Somewhere in the distance, Cronus feels the tremor of rebellion and realizes, too late, that he's underestimated his children. The war begins. The Titanomachy, the great battle between Titans and Olympians, rages for 10 years. You drift above it, watching flashes of light and shadow collide across the landscape. Mountains crumble and reform, seas boil, stars fall, and then climb back into the sky as if embarrassed. The sound of the fighting is a constant hum, like thunder layered on thunder. Zeus commands from the high ground, his voice carrying even through the din. Poseidon strikes the seas, sending towering waves crashing against Titan strongholds. Hades raises the earth itself to swallow enemies whole. Hera tends the wounded, multitasking between fury and logistics. Demeter's power warps the fields. Harvests rot overnight on the Titan's side, while Olympian soil yields endless grain. Even Hestia, gentle goddess of hearth and flame, keeps the fires burning that forge their weapons. On the other side, Cronus leads the Titans with grim determination. Atlas, the strongest of them, becomes his general. Hyperion hurls light like javelins. Oceanus, ever the pacifist, stays neutral, quietly circling the edges of the world like a disappointed uncle. The balance shifts constantly. One day, the Titans push the Olympians back to the edges of the sea. The next, Zeus rains storms so fierce they erase entire valleys. Historians still argue whether this decade-long war represents a memory of natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, volcanic eruptions, or simply a metaphor for generational change. But to you, watching from above, it feels oddly hypnotic. The repetition of battle, the slow grind of fate, it's less chaos, more inevitability. There's even humor in it, faint and weary. During one particularly long stalemate, Poseidon apparently tried to distract a Titan by flooding his tent, only to realize Titans don't use tents. Another story says the Cyclopes once threw a mountain and missed so badly that it landed thousands of miles away. Today, we call it Sicily. Divine aim was still a work in progress. By the 10th year, everyone's exhausted. Even immortals get tired of reruns. Zeus decides it's time to end it. He gathers his allies atop Mount Olympus and speaks softly, not shouting, not commanding, just certain. "We finish this," he says, and lifts the thunderbolt one last time. When it strikes, it's not like a single flash. It's a continuous roar of light that tears the horizon open. The Titans fall, one after another, the ground shuddering beneath them. Cronus stumbles, the sickle slipping from his grasp. His eyes meet Zeus's, and for a moment there's no rage, just recognition. The same look Uranus gave him once, the same unending cycle reflected in lightning. Then it's over. The air stills, the clouds settle. The war ends not with applause, but with the quiet exhaustion of inevitability. Zeus orders the defeated Titans cast into Tartarus, guarded by the 100-handed giants they once imprisoned. Atlas receives a special punishment. He must hold up the sky itself, a living pillar between heaven and earth. Some scholars suggest that punishment may symbolize the burden of astronomy, which makes sense if you squint. You drift over the smoking mountains, watching the new world exhale. The war is over, but something more permanent has begun. The age of the Titans has ended. The age of the Olympians is about to rise, shimmering like dawn after an endless storm. Cronus, bound and silent, stares from his prison in the underworld. You wonder whether he feels regret or relief. Maybe both, maybe neither. Myth rarely allows for tidy endings. Above, Zeus looks upward, toward the wide, starry ceiling once ruled by Uranus, and for the first time he smiles without fear. The family tree has sprouted again, and its newest branch is humming with lightning. You hover just above the world, still echoing with thunder from that last war. The smoke of fallen Titans curls into lazy clouds, and the air smells faintly of ozone and salt, like the aftermath of a cosmic summer storm. Zeus, newly victorious, doesn't immediately build palaces or monuments. He just stands there, breathing, feeling the weight of peace press against his shoulders for the first time. You can tell he's not used to it yet. Power feels strange in his hands, almost slippery. He's strong, yes, but the kind of strong that comes with the memory of struggle, not comfort. And now that the world is quiet again, Gaia's hum changes tone. It's no longer the rhythm of rebellion. It's the sigh of fresh order settling in. You drift downward, brushing against the cool grass of a world that's still steaming from battle. In valleys newly carved by divine earthquakes, rivers begin to trickle again. Trees sprout overnight. The air feels younger, as though someone hit refresh on creation. Zeus's siblings gather around him: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, all still dazed by how quickly everything changed. They exchange glances that say, "So, what now?" They've won, but victory leaves a strange quiet. Cronus and the Titans are locked away in Tartarus, guarded by their 100-handed jailers. The air above feels thinner, lighter, freer. But freedom can be confusing when you've never had to define it. Historians still argue whether Zeus took power democratically or just claimed it by force. But either way, a council forms among the 6 siblings. They sit beneath a young oak, Gaia's symbolic stamp of approval, and start dividing the universe like tired roommates trying to assign chores. Zeus gets the sky naturally. The thunderbolt suits him. He's always been the loudest and the brightest, and the heavens adore a bit of drama. Poseidon claims the sea, its depth calling to his temper and curiosity alike. Hades, quiet and solemn, takes the underworld, not out of greed, but because someone has to handle the dead, and he seems the least likely to complain about the smell. The 3 brothers look at each other, and you sense they actually like this arrangement. It feels balanced in a mythic, 3-way custody kind of way. The sisters choose differently. Hestia decides she's had enough of war and politics and takes up residence in every home's hearth. Flamekeeper, peacebringer, symbol of rest. She'll never get the same worshipful attention as her brothers, but she doesn't mind. Hestia's the quiet center, the stillness behind every storm. Demeter takes charge of fertility and harvest, her power tied to the rhythm of growing things. She's practical like that. And Hera, well, Hera's ambitions are clearer. She becomes queen, not just of Olympus, but of propriety itself. She's determined to make this new divine order something respectable. You can already sense how exhausting that's going to be for her. Together, they find a mountain tall enough to touch the clouds, Mount Olympus, and decide this will be home. You float up with them, past thin mist and bright sunlight, until the summit opens into meadows of gold and marble palaces that seem to hum with fresh creation. The air tastes like honey and rain. From here, they can see everything: the forests, the seas, even the dim horizon where Tartarus lurks far below. It's a throne with a view. Zeus plants his thunderbolt into the ground, and lightning roots like a tree. The Olympian era begins not with a proclamation, but with a quiet rumble that says, "Here we are. Let's try not to ruin it immediately." Of course they do, eventually, but that's later. For now, there's harmony. You can see the gods building their domains. Poseidon sculpting coral palaces beneath the waves, Hades carving his halls of obsidian under the earth, Demeter coaxing flowers from scorched soil. Hera designs order, Hestia builds comfort, and Zeus, well, Zeus experiments with lightning. He sends bolts across the sky, testing their distance and power, a little like a kid with a new toy. When one accidentally hits a nearby mountain, creating a crater, he laughs. Maybe tone it down, Hera mutters, already tired. Some myths say this is when the first humans appear, born from clay, crafted by Prometheus, a titan who wisely avoided imprisonment. They're small and curious, kind of like divine pets that ask too many questions. Zeus watches them with mild amusement, occasionally tossing them a thunderclap just to remind them who's in charge. Historians still argue whether humans were meant as entertainment, labor, or an accidental side effect of divine boredom. The evidence points toward all of the above, and in this early piece, Zeus starts to dream again, not of war this time, but of connection. He remembers the goat Amalthea who raised him, the curettes who protected him, and Rhea's trembling hands as she saved his life. Somewhere in that stormy heart of his, affection begins to flicker. He's no longer the hidden child or the rebel warrior. He's a ruler now, with all the restless loneliness that comes with leadership. You drift near him as he walks the edge of Olympus at dusk. The clouds below glow pink and gold, and his cloak trails sparks that fade like fireflies. "It's strange," he murmurs, mostly to himself. "We fought for peace, and now peace feels too quiet." You know the feeling, when the noise stops and suddenly you have to listen to your own thoughts. Hera joins him sometimes, steady and regal. She's not yet the jealous queen of later myths, just a goddess learning how to share eternity with a husband who can summon lightning when bored. They talk, laugh occasionally, even argue softly about how to govern mortals, how to maintain order among their siblings. You can almost see the tenderness forming, delicate but real. But even in their calmest moments, the world still quivers beneath the surface. The earth remembers every battle, every betrayal. Deep below, in Tartarus, the imprisoned titans stir. Cronus dreams, his thoughts slow and heavy. He doesn't curse his children anymore, he just waits. There's always another turn to the cycle, and high above, Zeus sleeps one night and dreams of thunderclouds forming into faces, familiar ones. The dream whispers of future storms, wars among gods, rivalries between siblings, children who will make his own heart ache. But for now, as he exhales, the sky quiets. The stars blink like distant campfires, the world below hums like a lullaby, and the mountain sighs. If you listen closely, you can hear Hestia's fire crackling faintly, a heartbeat of warmth in this newborn divine kingdom. The gods are home, for now, and the cosmos finally feels organized, sort of. You blink, and centuries seem to roll by like slow waves against a cliff. Olympus settles into routine, the kind of mythic normalcy that only immortal beings can achieve. The gods wake, argue, eat ambrosia, interfere with mortals, and then repeat. There's a rhythm to it, steady enough to lull the world into thinking this is how it's always been. You can almost feel yourself rocking in that divine tempo. Zeus sits on his golden throne, lightning bolts stacked neatly by his side like office supplies. The clouds outside his hall drift lazily, obedient as trained pets. He rules not just with power, but with a sense of theater. Every judgment he makes comes with a dramatic pause and an echo of thunder. You'd roll your eyes if you weren't a little impressed. But Olympus isn't just about Zeus anymore. Around him, the family expands, a network of new gods, each branching from the tangled roots of his own relationships. You can almost see the family tree sprouting like ivy, curling around marble columns and twining into endless loops. It starts with Hera. She and Zeus finally marry, an event celebrated with such splendor that even the winds stop to attend. The peacocks strut in her honor, their tails glittering like jeweled fans. She looks radiant, dignified, and entirely convinced this will be a well-managed divine household. Spoiler, it won't. Their union produces children who embody order, beauty, and a dash of chaos, because this is Olympus after all. There's Ares, god of war, loud and volatile, always ready to turn sibling disagreements into full-blown battles. Hebe, goddess of youth, sweet and hopeful, pouring ambrosia at family dinners while pretending not to notice the shouting. And Eileithyia, goddess of childbirth, who will spend eternity watching mortals scream and breathe life at the same time. It's not glamorous, but someone has to do it. Hera tries to maintain the image of the perfect divine matriarch. She wants Olympus to shine with dignity, grace, and moral order. Unfortunately, she's married to Zeus, who collects romantic misadventures like trophies. Historians still argue whether these affairs reflect ancient storytelling traditions about fertility and power, or just a running joke about how gods have zero impulse control. Either way, it's messy. You float beside Zeus as he roams the earth, disguised as animals, clouds, or even golden rain. He's curious, restless, perpetually fascinated by mortals and other deities alike. Each encounter births another divine child, another branch on the family tree, another future argument at Olympus dinners. Take Athena, for instance. She's born not from Hera, but from Zeus himself, literally from his head. You hear the story unfold like a dream. Zeus suffers a massive headache, groans so loudly that the mountains echo, and then, crack, Athena bursts out, fully grown, armored, and surprisingly calm about the whole thing. Historians still argue whether this symbolizes the birth of wisdom from divine thought, or whether it's just a weirdly specific metaphor for migraines. Either way, she immediately becomes one of Zeus's favorites, level-headed and sharp, where he is impulsive and loud. Then there's Apollo and Artemis, twins born from Leto, another of Zeus's consorts. Their births don't come easy. Hera, understandably annoyed, forbids any land under the sun to give Leto shelter. So Leto finds refuge on the floating island of Delos, which politely agrees to stop drifting long enough for her to give birth. Apollo arrives radiant as sunlight, Artemis serene and silver like moonlight. The balance is perfect, day and night embodied as siblings who actually get along, which must have been refreshing for the family. But it's not all beauty and balance. From Zeus's other unions come darker figures, Hermes, mischievous and clever, Dionysus, unpredictable and joyful to the point of madness, Persephone, daughter of Demeter and eventual queen of the underworld. Each one brings a new kind of energy to Olympus, a new rule or contradiction. The family keeps growing, more complex and entangled than the branches of any mortal dynasty. You drift between them, feeling the pulse of immortality hum through the halls. There's laughter, argument, music. One moment, Hermes is stealing Apollo's cattle. The next, Ares is sulking because someone didn't appreciate his new battle helmet. It's chaotic, but it's a living chaos, vibrant, golden, eternal. Down below, mortals begin to build temples. They tell stories, sculpt statues, light fires in the gods' names. You can smell the smoke rising, sweet with offerings. In every flickering flame, Hestia's gentle presence lingers. She doesn't crave worship, she just keeps the world warm. Demeter watches over the fields, teaching mortals the cycles of planting and harvest. Poseidon rides the waves, his trident carving paths through the sea foam. Hades remains apart, unseen but necessary, the keeper of endings. And through it all, Zeus listens. When mortals pray, their voices drift upward like wind through reeds. Some ask for rain, others for victory, some just for peace. Zeus grants a few, ignores others. You get the sense he's still learning the art of balance, how to be both distant and merciful, both storm and sky. One quiet night on Olympus, he gazes down at the world. The stars shimmer like eyes half asleep. It's strange, he muses, how they need us. Hera, half listening, replies, maybe they don't. Maybe we need them to remember us. The words hang in the air, soft but sharp. You can almost feel time pause around that truth. A quirky tidbit comes to mind here. Ancient Greek priests used to leave food out overnight as dinners for the gods, and if the food was gone by morning, they said Zeus had visited. In reality, it was probably stray dogs or the occasional raccoon-like creature. But who's counting? Olympus glows gently, each god's presence a flickering light. The family tree is now vast, stretching from divine heights to mortal hearts. You can trace every branch back to Gaia, to chaos, to that first breath of creation, and forward to stories still unfolding. Zeus leans back in his throne, eyes half closed, thunderbolt resting across his knees. You can almost hear him thinking, not of war, not of conquest, but of continuity, the family, the power, the endless chain of birth and rebellion. For all his might, he's still just another link. And as the night deepens, a soft wind moves through Olympus. Hestia's flame flickers. Hera's peacocks doze. Somewhere, Hermes laughs in his sleep. The gods are resting, but the world below never stops dreaming of them. Each dream another offering, another whisper of immortality. You float over Olympus again, only now the glow feels softer, more lived in. The gods have settled into their roles like actors in a long-running show. Comfortable, occasionally bored, always dramatic when the audience is watching. The marble halls echo with laughter, music, and the occasional thunderclap of marital arguments. Life, immortal life anyway, has become routine. But no routine lasts forever, especially when your family tree resembles a bramble bush tangled in lightning. The Olympians' peace starts to tremble, gently at first, then steadily, as new generations arrive, each one stranger, bolder, and occasionally weirder than the last. The gods have children of their own now, each born with powers that don't always respect boundaries. And the mortals below? They start to take notice. Worship brings devotion, and devotion brings drama. You drift past Zeus's throne room, where the king of gods is once again pacing. His golden robes shimmer with faint static. You can tell he's troubled, not by war this time, but by lineage. The Olympians, once united by rebellion, are drifting apart under the weight of their divine family politics. Hera still rules beside him, radiant and formidable, though her patience has worn thin. Her marriage to Zeus remains the most famously turbulent relationship in mythology, equal parts love story and soap opera. You overhear them mid-discussion about a particularly troublesome demigod child Zeus fathered with yet another mortal woman. Hera's eyes could freeze volcanoes. You can't just make new heroes every time you're bored, she hisses. Zeus sighs, muttering something about the inspiration of creation, which, unsurprisingly, doesn't help. Historians still argue whether these myths about Zeus's affairs represent moral lessons or political metaphors, but either way, they serve as an eternal warning about workplace relationships, especially when your workplace is the entire sky. Still, the offspring of these unions reshape the world. Hercules, for instance, half mortal, half divine, becomes a symbol of endurance, completing impossible labors while mortals cheer and gods place bets. Perseus, another of Zeus's mortal sons, slays monsters with casual flair. Even Athena, technically born without a mother, mentors heroes from the safety of her temple, whispering strategies like a divine life coach. And it isn't just Zeus. Poseidon's offspring include sea nymphs, mermen, and, most famously, the Cyclops Polyphemus, whose single eye and terrible table manners make him a legend in his own right. Demeter's daughter Persephone divides her time between sunlight and shadow, her yearly return from Hades marking the seasons. Hera, perhaps tired of being sidelined, creates Hephaestus all by herself, a brilliant limping smith who crafts wonders and weapons alike. His forge fills Olympus with the rhythm of hammers and sparks, like a divine heartbeat of creation. Everywhere you look, lineage stretches outward like ripples in a pond. The Olympians are no longer just gods, they're dynasties, mythic networks of cousins and half-siblings, stepchildren and rivals. You could map it, but you'd need a scroll the size of a continent. A quirky little fact? Ancient Greeks actually tried to do that. Philosophers like Plato and later mythographers drew literal genealogies, family charts of gods and heroes, to make sense of this cosmic chaos. Historians still argue whether these were sacred records or just early fan theories written with very expensive ink. On Olympus, the ripple effects start to show. Power, once centralized, now fragments into specialties. Artemis guards the forests, refusing marriage altogether, content with her nymph companions and moonlit hunts. Apollo builds temples of prophecy, invents music, and manages to look fabulous while doing both. Hermes flits everywhere, patron of travelers, thieves, and anyone who likes loopholes. Ares turns every disagreement into a full-scale battlefield, while Dionysus throws parties that make even Zeus raise an eyebrow. It's lively, exhausting, and strangely human. You drift past their gatherings, grand feasts where ambrosia glows like liquid sunlight and laughter shakes the heavens. Mortals below imagine these banquets as perfect harmony, but from your vantage, it's a family dinner with divine table flips. Athena debates philosophy with Hermes until someone accidentally spills nectar on her scrolls. Aphrodite, goddess of love and flawless timing, teases Ares until Hera clears her throat so loudly it echoes across the mountains. And when Zeus raises a cup for peace, thunder grumbles just to remind everyone who signs the checks. Even the world below reflects this divine clutter. Rivers bear the names of minor gods. Mountains are said to be sleeping giants. Constellations mark the fates of Zeus's countless affairs. Every creature, storm, or fruit seems to have a mythic origin story. You can barely take a step without tripping over symbolism. And yet, beneath the laughter and thunder, something else begins to stir. Deep in the earth, far below even Tartarus, a new power shifts uneasily. Gaia feels it before anyone else. The earth groans, not in anger, but in warning, because every generation that overthrows the last leaves something unresolved beneath the surface. She remembers Uranus and his fall. She remembers Cronus, chained in darkness. She senses the same impatience now growing in her grandchildren's children, the Olympians themselves. Power never stays still for long. It's like a river, beautiful, destructive, and always seeking new paths. You watch Zeus glance nervously at the sky one evening. He's ruled longer than any before him, but eternity has a way of making even kings restless. He knows what happened to his father and his father's father. Prophecy always runs in the family like bad genetics. "I've secured the heavens," he murmurs, "but not the future." Hera looks at him sharply. "Then stop creating new futures," she says. It's the closest thing to a joke she's allowed herself in centuries. Still, prophecies creep in at the edges. One whisper says a son of Zeus will one day be stronger than him. Another claims the old powers beneath the world are stirring again. You can feel the weight of it, like thunder waiting for a cue. Historians still argue whether these myths reflect real political anxieties of ancient Greece or simply the universal truth that no empire lasts forever. For now, Olympus still gleams. The gods laugh, feast, and meddle in mortal affairs. They weave themselves into every story told by firelight below. Heroes, monsters, storms, miracles. Their names echo across mountains and islands as familiar to the Greeks as the sound of waves. And when night falls, the stars themselves seem to shimmer with divine gossip. Every constellation is a reminder, every myth a flicker of memory. The family tree stretches through time, and you can feel its pulse, steady, unbroken, but trembling at the edges. Somewhere beneath the surface, the earth waits. Above, the heavens watch. Between them, the Olympians go on pretending everything is fine, unaware that the next generation is already watching them with curious, dangerous eyes. For now, though, you let the sound of the divine laughter fade into a hush. The world breathes, content in its illusion of permanence. You know better, of course, but tonight it's enough just to drift. You hover in the gentle dusk above Olympus, watching the clouds swirl like sleep-heavy dreams around its marble peaks. The gods seem eternal from a distance, unchanging, glittering, poised. But you've been around long enough to know that nothing divine ever stays simple. The next phase of the Olympian family tree is about to get complicated. Like draw a diagram and still get confused, complicated. Zeus still rules, his thunderbolts neatly stacked beside the throne. Hera sits close by, as composed as ever, though her expression says she's already endured 5 centuries too many of this arrangement. Around them, the Olympian household buzzes with new generations, young gods, demigods, and the occasional mortal descendant who accidentally earns a seat at the family dinner table by doing something impressively reckless. Tonight, the palace feels crowded. You glide through a hallway where winged sandals hang next to tridents, where a half-built lyre leans against a golden helmet. It smells of metal, olive oil, and whatever immortality tastes like. Probably honey, thunder, and just a hint of ego. Zeus calls a council, as he does whenever his family drama threatens to leak into mortal history. You can tell it's serious because Hermes actually arrives on time. Poseidon materializes in a swirl of seawater dripping politely onto the marble. Hades sends a shadow in his place, claiming he's busy with souls. He's not. He just hates family meetings. The discussion begins with a low rumble of voices. You recognize the tone, divine damage control. The younger gods, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Hermes, and the rest, have been getting restless. They've watched their parents build an empire of order, and they're itching to redefine it. It's the same old cycle, each generation believing it can improve on the last, usually by breaking a few celestial rules first. Mortals, Athena says crisply, are worshipping too many minor spirits. The system's becoming inefficient. She gestures with her spear like she's giving a TED talk. Hermes grins. I think it's charming. Keeps us mysterious. Plus, they tip well. Apollo strums his lyre, golden hair catching the light. Maybe they just like variety, he muses. The sun, the moon, a little poetry, some plague. What's not to love? Artemis rolls her eyes, polishing an arrow. They love you because you never stop talking. Zeus listens, thunder muttering faintly under his breath. He knows that divine influence is spreading too thin, that each new deity dilutes the old hierarchy. Historians still argue whether this reflects the real fragmentation of Greek city-states, each favoring its own patron god. But up here, it feels personal. Power is like inheritance. It gets messier the more hands it passes through. To make matters worse, mortals have started telling stories about the gods' mistakes. When you're immortal, reputation is everything, and lately, those reputations are getting weird. Someone down in Athens claims Hermes stole Apollo's cows. True. Another bard sings about Ares losing a fight to a mortal hero. Embarrassingly true. And somewhere in Thebes, a playwright has written a tragedy about Zeus's human flings that's definitely not family-friendly. Maybe, Hera says icily, if someone stopped turning into swans and golden mist, our image would improve. Zeus tries to look offended but fails spectacularly. You almost feel bad for him. Almost. There's an odd rhythm to the tension. Lightning flashes, then laughter follows. These gods can't stay serious for long. Even their arguments sound like rehearsed performances, each with perfect timing and thunderous applause from the winds. And yet, beneath the laughter, there's unease. The earth shivers faintly, a tremor felt only by the oldest beings, Gaia still listening, the Titans still murmuring in their dark prison. You sense it too, the return of something ancient. The myth of the gigantomachy begins quietly, like a half-remembered dream. Giants, born from Gaia's anger at Zeus for imprisoning her Titan children, start to rise from the earth. They are massive, unpredictable, part god, part mountain, and all attitude. Gaia herself, in her grief, nurtures them from her own soil, each one stronger than steel, destined to challenge the Olympians. The prophecy whispers, the gods cannot defeat the giants alone. Only with mortal help can they prevail. Zeus hears it and frowns. He's not fond of prophecies that limit his thunderbolt's ego. You drift closer as the first battles ignite. The air thickens with the smell of ash and rain. The giants roar, tearing at the sky, hurling boulders like pebbles. Olympus trembles but doesn't fall. The gods rally, each wielding their domain like a weapon. Poseidon lashes the sea into tidal fury. Apollo blinds the enemy with light. And Athena, ever the strategist, guides Heracles, the mortal champion, into the fray. Heracles, that half-divine hero, fights with the calm precision of someone who's used to absurd quests. He's the key to prophecy, the mortal hand that tips the balance. You can almost hear the earth sigh as he strikes down the last of the giants. The war ends not in chaos, but in inevitability, like every myth before it. Historians still argue whether this story symbolizes the triumph of civilization over primal forces, or simply another metaphor for earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Either way, you feel the same repeating pulse. The children rise, challenge the parents, and balance is restored only when both sides learn cooperation. After the battle, the world feels cleaner, quiet. The gods breathe again, brushing dust off their divine robes. Hestia's flame burns steadily once more, and Demeter's fields regrow. Hera pretends she didn't spend half the battle scolding Zeus mid-lightning strike. You could swear you hear Hermes taking notes for a future sales pitch about authentic Olympus souvenirs. Zeus sits once more on his throne, the storm within him softened. We've faced the Titans, he says, and now the giants. What comes next? No one answers, but you can feel the question hanging in the air. The next generation always comes next. The gods know it. Even immortality can't stop the slow drift of time, the evolution of belief. Down below, mortals are changing, their cities growing, their stories multiplying. Each one reshapes the gods a little, giving them new faces, new names. Immortality isn't stasis, it's constant reinvention. And so Olympus exhales again. The halls are mended, the laughter returns, and another chapter of the family's drama folds into the long scroll of myth. The cycle continues, patient and endless. A quirky tidbit to leave floating in your mind. Some ancient temples actually buried tiny clay figures of the giants under their foundations, symbolic insurance against rebellion from below. Even architects believed that myths held up the world, quite literally. You linger a moment longer, watching clouds drift lazily around the mountain. The gods sip nectar, pose for frescoes, and pretend not to remember how close the ground came to swallowing them whole. You can almost hear Zeus whisper, not to Hera this time, but to himself, "May the roots stay buried." Of course, you and I both know, they never do. You float above Olympus once more, and tonight you sense that the thunder in Zeus's chest has quieted, if only for now. The lightning is tucked away, but tension still hums between him and Hera like static in the air before a summer storm. You already know Hera, regal, poised, and the sort of person who can make you apologize for breathing too loudly. She's been through epochs of divine nonsense, and at this point, she deserves a medal, or perhaps just an uninterrupted nap. Hera's domain is marriage, fidelity, and family. Ironic, considering her husband treats vows like flexible suggestions. Still, she remains the queen of Olympus, the unshakable pillar beside Zeus's volatile power. You can almost see her right now, arranging her peacock feather cloak with slow precision, sipping ambrosia like it's herbal tea steeped in frustration. Her patience, though legendary, has limits. You've seen those limits before, in the mythic side-eye she gives Zeus every time another constellation appears that looks suspiciously like one of his friends. The world down below teems with half-divine offspring, Heracles, Perseus, Helen of Troy, Minos, and a collection of nymphs, heroes, and very confused mortals. Hera has had enough of watching genealogical chaos unfold, and yet, for all her anger, she's not purely vengeful. Hera's fury often wears a disguise. It's justice, pride, or heartbreak with good posture. You follow her through the halls of Olympus as she passes golden statues of other gods, each one gleaming under torchlight. Her footsteps echo in time with your own heartbeat, steady and slow. She pauses before a window that overlooks the mortal world. The clouds shift, revealing Argos, her favored city, where her priests light candles to her each evening. Down there, she's not just Zeus's wife. She's a goddess of protection, a symbol of steadfastness. Historians still argue whether Hera's worship originally existed separate from Zeus, a queen deity absorbed later into his pantheon. But in her eyes, you see both the ancient sovereignty and the modern exhaustion of someone who's been managing divine public relations for millennia. You remember when Zeus once disguised himself as a bird to woo a mortal woman, a swan specifically, because apparently that works. When the woman gave birth, Hera's jealousy burned brighter than the sun itself. She sent serpents to the infant's cradle, but the baby was Heracles, strong enough even then to strangle them in his sleep. You can imagine Hera's reaction, a sigh maybe, followed by an eye roll so powerful it could register on the Richter scale. But later, she became part of his story in a way she probably didn't expect. After years of animosity, Heracles eventually found redemption, and when he ascended to Olympus, Hera adopted him as her own son. That's the quiet twist people forget. Beneath her rage, Hera is capable of forgiveness, slow, deliberate forgiveness, the kind that takes centuries but arrives like dawn after endless night. As you trail her deeper into Olympus, you notice how she manages her household like a CEO, deliberate, structured, slightly terrifying. Every god respects her, even Ares, her own tempestuous son, who blusters loudly but never meets her gaze for long. Hephaestus, the god of craftsmanship, owes his resilience to her as well. Some stories say she birthed him alone, out of sheer defiance after Zeus bore Athena without her. Others say Zeus hurled the infant from Olympus for being imperfect, and Hera, despite her pride, never forgot the loss. Historians still debate which version came first, but the emotional truth remains. Hera's strength is built on endurance. You drift into the great hall again, where she sits beside Zeus as mortals' prayers shimmer like fireflies around them. A farmer in Thessaly pleads for rain, a queen in Thebes begs for fertility, a sailor whispers thanks for surviving a storm. Hera listens to them all, her expression softening, her anger dissolving like morning mist. She loves order, the rhythm of vows, the sanctity of bonds. You sense that in her heart, Hera doesn't despise love itself. She despises carelessness. The way Zeus plays dice with devotion, tossing it to the wind as if affection were a renewable resource. You almost want to pat her shoulder, tell her that even gods can't fix someone who thinks thunder is a personality trait. But then she surprises you. Instead of unleashing a storm, Hera takes a breath, tilts her head, and releases a laugh, a small melodic sound, like wind chimes in distant valleys. "Let him chase," she murmurs, almost to herself. "Let him forget what he's caught." You realize then that Hera's wisdom isn't in her restraint, but in her perspective. She's lived long enough to know that immortality doesn't guarantee understanding. Every generation of gods makes the same mistakes, only the settings change. And she, eternal witness, watches the cycle spin again and again, patient as time itself. A quirky tidbit for your sleepy brain. Ancient Greek brides used to dedicate a lock of their hair to Hera before marriage. It was a symbolic gesture of humility and devotion, but also a low-key way of saying, "Please don't curse my wedding." You have to admire the practicality. Back in the hall, Hermes appears with a smirk, clearly sent on some errand involving damage control. "Message from your husband," he says lightly. "Something about a thundercloud festival and dolphins?" Hera raises one eyebrow. "Tell him I'm in prayer." Hermes vanishes instantly. Wise choice. You follow Hera as she steps out onto the marble balcony. The wind carries faint songs from mortals below, hymns rising toward her in waves of devotion. The stars stretch endlessly above, and for a moment even the Queen of Heaven looks small beneath them. Her face softens, not from defeat, but from clarity. She knows every star is a story, and too many of them are about Zeus. Still, she stands proud, guarding the sky with quiet dignity. "Let them tell their tales," she says finally, her voice soft as dusk. "Even the messy ones. They remember me too, and they do. Long after empires crumble, temples fade, and languages change, Hera's image endures, not as the jealous wife, but as the eternal witness to love's fragility and resilience. You drift away from Olympus now, lulled by her steady grace. The clouds below are warm and glowing, the air thick with golden silence. Maybe, you think, every myth needs its Hera, a reminder that even the gods must learn patience or risk drowning in their own thunder. Somewhere in the distance, Zeus sneezes and a lightning bolt misfires. Hera sighs again. The cycle continues. You let yourself sink this time, down through the clouds, down past the bright halls of Olympus, past where sunlight fades into the slow rolling sway of the sea. The light thins to ribbons, weaving through the waves like threads of glass. The air hums differently here, heavy and cool, carrying the distant pulse of tides and the muffled beat of an enormous heart. This is Poseidon's world now. You feel the shift immediately. Everything beneath the waves moves at Poseidon's pace, steady, restless, ancient. He's the god of the sea, earthquakes and horses, which sounds like a chaotic combination until you realize all three things share the same unpredictable energy. One moment calm, the next explosive, never truly tamed. Poseidon rules this realm with a mixture of pride and saltwater irritation. He was one of the three brothers who divided the cosmos. Zeus took the sky, Hades the underworld, and Poseidon the sea. Scholars still argue whether that division was fair or the divine equivalent of drawing straws, but it's clear Poseidon feels like he got the most alive piece of the world. Water touches everything after all. It's always moving, whispering secrets, carrying stories from shore to shore. You drift closer to his palace, a glittering fortress of coral and pearl that breathes like a living thing. The columns shimmer with fish-scale light. Sea anemones bloom like underwater chandeliers. Dolphins glide past, their laughter echoing faintly in the currents. Poseidon sits on a throne made from the spine of some ancient sea creature, his trident propped casually at his side. His beard flows in waves, his expression caught somewhere between regal dignity and mild annoyance, as if someone just spilled seawater on his schedule again. At first glance, he looks calmer than Zeus. Broader shoulders, slower movements, a voice like deep thunder muffled by the sea. But spend enough time down here and you notice the undercurrent. Poseidon is moodier, more changeable. When he's pleased, the waters gleam crystal blue. When anger stirs, entire coastlines tremble. That's where his title, Earthshaker, comes from. He doesn't just rule the ocean, he stirs the land itself. You float beside him as a mermaid attendant delivers news from above. Another mortal king has built ships without offering proper sacrifice, and Poseidon's eyes narrow with faint amusement. Mortals, he mutters, tapping his trident on the seafloor. They think they understand tides. He waves his hand, and a distant storm answers, swelling like a yawn. A small punishment, nothing fatal, just a reminder that the sea doesn't forget etiquette. You can almost hear the wind picking up on some faraway coast. Poseidon's domain teems with family, hundreds of children, half-gods, nymphs, and strange hybrid creatures. His romantic record is nearly as long as Zeus's, though he prefers quieter liaisons. Amphitrite, his queen, keeps the palace running smoothly. She's a sea goddess in her own right, composed and luminous, forever balancing her husband's temper with gentle control. Some myths say she fled from Poseidon's advances at first, hiding among sea nymphs until a dolphin convinced her to return. In gratitude, Poseidon immortalized that dolphin as a constellation, a rare example of his softer side. Among Poseidon's many offspring, some shine brighter than others. You remember Triton, the merman herald with a conch shell that can calm or summon storms. He's practically the ocean's PA system. Then there's Theseus, the mortal hero whom Poseidon claimed as his son, though historians still debate whether that was divine PR or legitimate lineage. Poseidon's children often reflect his own temperament, bold, inconsistent, occasionally disastrous. A quirky tidbit: ancient Greek sailors sometimes threw a bronze ring into the sea before voyages, symbolically bribing Poseidon for safe passage. You can imagine him collecting those at the ocean floor like a godly coin hoard, rolling his eyes as yet another ship forgets the ritual. As you wander through his realm, you pass through vast coral libraries where currents whisper history in bubbles. There are underwater temples built by long-forgotten civilizations, columns encrusted with shells, mosaics depicting storms that no longer rage. Scholars still argue whether stories of Atlantis began as an echo of Poseidon's kingdom, an allegory that drowned over time, or maybe a memory too close to truth. Poseidon himself doesn't confirm or deny. He only smiles when the topic arises, eyes gleaming with the mystery of someone who knows the real story but enjoys watching mortals guess. Sometimes he visits land, striding up from the surf with foam still clinging to his hair. Horses, his other obsession, greet him instinctively, manes rippling like seaweed, hooves stamping as if they too remember their ocean origins. According to myth, Poseidon created the first horse while trying to impress Demeter. Historians still debate whether this tale represents an early horse-breeding cult or just divine overachievement. Either way, it worked. The horse became one of humanity's most revered creatures, carrying the sea's energy across land. You drift alongside Poseidon now as he surveys his watery expanse. There's a rhythm to his rule, a kind of meditative repetition. Waves rise, crash, retreat. Fish shimmer, vanish, reappear. He doesn't interfere constantly, just occasionally nudges the balance. The ocean, like him, thrives on motion. But sometimes even gods feel loneliness. The sea is vast, after all, and even a throne of coral can feel cold. You sense it in Poseidon's gaze when he stares toward the dim horizon, past where the water turns to twilight. He's the middle brother, always between extremes, Zeus's sky above and Hades' underworld below. Perhaps that's why he oscillates between fury and calm, caught between light and darkness. Mortals forget, he says softly, though you're not sure if he's talking to you or the current. They build walls against the sea, but the tide remembers its path. He's right. Every wave that touches the shore is a memory, older than cities, older than myths. The sea never forgets its shape. It just changes costume. You glide past an underwater mountain now, once a volcano, now covered in coral. A family of sea turtles drifts lazily by. The light bends through the surface above, rippling like silk. Everything feels endless, yet soothingly cyclical, like Poseidon's moods, like the world itself. He stands, lifts his trident, and the water around you vibrates. Peace, he says, and the waves obey. For now. Maybe that's the heart of Poseidon's story, power balanced by mood, creation mingled with chaos. The sea gives, and the sea takes, and somewhere in between it sings. You rise slowly toward the surface, the currents wrapping you in their sleepy rhythm. You realize that Poseidon isn't just a storm god. He's the sound of your own pulse when you rest your head on a pillow and hear the ocean that lives inside your chest. Up above, the stars glimmer faintly on the water's skin. Poseidon's realm sleeps again. For now, all is calm, all is deep. You drift downward again, this time below the glimmering surface, past Poseidon's realm, where light fades to blue, then gray, then something like memory. The air grows thick, though you don't need to breathe here. You just float, weightless, silent, until the darkness settles around you like velvet. You've arrived in the underworld, Hades' quiet dominion. Forget the fiery pits you've seen in cartoons. This is not a place of torment. It's a place of order, of stillness. The rivers murmur softly, each one whispering the story of its flow. The Styx, Lethe, Acheron, Phlegethon, Cocytus, all meeting in currents that tug at your thoughts. Somewhere nearby, a ferry creaks, and you can almost hear the faint plink of coins as souls pay their fare to Charon. The air smells of stone and distance. You follow the slow rhythm of footsteps that don't echo. There he is, Hades, god of the underworld, sitting beside a pool of black glass. His posture is calm, deliberate, and unlike his brothers, there's no spark of anger or vanity in his gaze, just deep patience, as if he's seen everything worth seeing and decided to speak only when necessary. You might think ruling the dead would make someone gloomy, but Hades is more of an accountant of eternity, methodical, fair, slightly overworked. Mortals fear him, but the gods respect him. Historians still argue whether he was ever truly considered evil or merely misunderstood, since the Greeks saw death as part of the natural cycle, not its enemy. He's not alone here. At his side stands Persephone, half springtime, half shadow. She glows faintly, her hair like sunlight filtered through deep water. Together, they form one of the strangest and most beautiful partnerships in all mythology. You've heard their story before, though it changes with every telling. Persephone, daughter of Demeter, was gathering flowers one day when Hades emerged from the earth in a chariot of obsidian, sweeping her away to the underworld. Demeter's grief made the earth barren until a compromise was struck. Persephone would spend part of the year below with Hades and part above with her mother. Historians still debate whether the tale began as an agricultural allegory for the seasons or a metaphor for marriage and transformation. Either way, it's hauntingly cyclical, death and rebirth, darkness and growth. Now, as you watch them together, the myth feels less like abduction and more like balance. Persephone moves through the underworld as though she belongs here, her presence softening its edges. Flowers bloom even in the shadows when she passes, white blossoms that drink darkness instead of sunlight. Hades watches her with quiet fondness. There's no thunder here, no jealous storms, only an eternal twilight that hums with patience. You realize that, among all the divine couples, theirs might be the most stable. He never strays. She never forgets to return. It's a love shaped not by fireworks, but by routine, a rhythm that outlasts chaos. You follow them as they stroll along the asphodel meadows, where ordinary souls wander in dreamlike calm. They drift like dandelion seeds, murmuring half-remembered lives. No torment, no reward, just rest. Persephone occasionally bends down to touch a soul's shoulder, her fingers leaving behind a faint shimmer of warmth. You can almost feel it, a kindness so gentle it could rock you to sleep. Nearby, the fields of Elysium glow faintly gold, reserved for heroes and poets who lived justly. You can almost hear soft music rising from them, a sleepy lyre, a low hum of laughter, a quirky tidbit. Some ancient texts describe Elysium as not underground at all, but across the ocean, a paradise of gentle breezes and endless twilight. Historians still argue which version was older, though maybe both are true in their own ways. Farther away, darker regions brood, Tartarus, where the Titans remain imprisoned. You can sense their murmurs, faint as underwater thunder. Hades rarely visits. It's like the basement of a basement, even by underworld standards. As you wander further, Cerberus pads up beside you. The three-headed dog watches you curiously, one head wagging its tail, another yawning, the third pretending to be disinterested. You reach out, gingerly, and scratch behind one ear. The middle head sighs happily, the left sneezes, the right tries to look dignified. You get the sense that even Death's guardian just wants a little affection now and then. Persephone glances back, smiling faintly at the sight. She gestures for you to follow again as she and Hades return to the throne room. The space gleams with subdued beauty. Silver roots twine through the ceiling. Faint lights flicker like stars caught in stone. On the floor, faint etchings record mortal names, each one glowing briefly as a soul passes judgment. When a newly arrived shade steps forward, Hades listens, silent and impartial. There are no bribes, no pleading, just balance. He gestures once, and the soul drifts away to its resting place. Even in death, he murmurs, almost to himself, there must be fairness. You wonder if he envies his brothers. Zeus has the sky, Poseidon the ocean, both seen and worshipped daily. Hades rules what everyone fears but can't escape. Maybe that's why he doesn't bother with temples. Few mortals want to invite death closer than necessary, yet those who honored him properly found him just. Farmers sometimes offered honey and black sheep to ensure peace for their ancestors, a reminder that the god of death could also be the god of wealth, the riches beneath the earth, both literal and spiritual. Persephone leans close to him now, whispering something that makes him smile. Barely, but it's there. It's the kind of small human expression that reminds you even gods need warmth. The two of them rise, and the entire underworld seems to exhale. Shadows soften, rivers calm, even Cerberus curls up at the foot of the throne. The air grows thick with peace. Maybe, you think, the underworld isn't something to fear but to understand, a place where everything ends so that something else might begin. The cycle doesn't stop here, it only pauses. You can feel it now, the pull upward, the faint call of sunlight returning. Persephone will rise soon, bringing spring to the mortal world again. Hades will stay behind, counting stars no one sees. And you, caught between their worlds, will carry a little of both within you, the quiet of endings and the soft promise of renewal. When you finally drift upward, you glance back. The gates close slowly, their iron glimmering faintly. The rivers hum, the souls murmur, and the last thing you see is Hades's calm silhouette beside Persephone's gentle glow. Together, they rule not through fear, but through acceptance. And above them, somewhere, new branches of the divine family tree stretch toward the sky, already preparing for the next myth to bloom. You rise again, leaving behind the quiet of the underworld, up through the trembling layers of sea blue and sky gold, until the air grows thinner and the light turns syrup slow. Olympus greets you like an old friend, gleaming, noisy, never quite tidy. But something has changed. The family has grown larger, louder, and, somehow, less organized. You land softly on the marble steps and immediately sense it. This place is crowded with cousins. You know them, the second generation of Olympians, the nieces, nephews, and demi-deities who fill the halls with gossip, rivalry, and questionable art projects. The main Olympians might have claimed their thrones long ago, but these younger gods are the ones who make mythology interesting and, frankly, exhausting. You wander down a corridor lined with statues that somehow all look smug. A voice echoes, a rhythmic clang of metal. You follow the sound to find Athena, goddess of wisdom and war strategy, inspecting a newly forged spear. She moves like precision incarnate, cool and deliberate, her gray eyes gleaming with thought. Born from Zeus's forehead after an especially bad migraine, Athena is the intellectual center of Olympus. She's the goddess mortals pray to before exams and generals consult before charging into battle. She looks up, nodding at you as though you've arrived right on schedule. You can tell a lot about a civilization, she murmurs, by how it treats its thinkers. She gestures toward a stack of scrolls beside her. Mortals keep forgetting that progress isn't loud. It's steady. You smile. Well, she's not wrong. Historians still argue whether Athena's rise reflected Greece's own growing respect for reason and politics. She's both warrior and philosopher, and that duality makes her the gods' perfect middle manager. Calm, terrifying, and probably right. You continue down the hall and find Ares, her half-brother, polishing his armor while loudly complaining that no one appreciates his true artistry. Ares is the god of raw war, blood, chaos, adrenaline. He's what happens when battle stops being strategy and starts being noise. The contrast between him and Athena is cosmic irony in sibling form. The two of them have a rivalry that's practically mythological in itself. Athena fights with foresight. Ares fights with impulse. She wins through intellect. He wins through sheer enthusiasm and occasional luck. They bicker constantly, yet some part of them respects the balance they create. Order and chaos, logic and fury, yin and yang, with better helmets. You watch as they argue over whose temple in Athens should get more offerings. Athena eventually wins, of course, because she literally gifted the city its sacred olive tree. Ares storms off to sulk in Thrace. You can't help but laugh softly. The gods, for all their grandeur, behave like relatives fighting over inheritance. Nearby, the light shifts. You follow the scent of laurel and sunlight to a courtyard where Apollo lounges with a lyre, strumming lazily. The air ripples with golden music, notes so pure they could lull the world into daydreams. He's the god of music, prophecy, healing, and, depending on the day, self-confidence. His twin sister, Artemis, perches nearby, bow across her knees, smirking at his self-absorbed monologue. "Listen to this," Apollo says, plucking a perfect chord. The mortals call it harmony. "They call it noise when you don't stop," Artemis replies dryly, examining an arrowhead. They're twins, but opposites, sun and moon, civilization and wilderness, perfection and independence. Artemis rules the forests, protector of women and animals, eternally youthful and fierce. Mortals whisper prayers to her in the hush of midnight hunts. Apollo rules the structured world, music, poetry, medicine, even logic. His temple at Delphi hums with prophecies, his priests inhaling sacred fumes to translate divine riddles. Historians still argue whether the twin deities symbolize balance in Greek society, rational order paired with natural instinct, or just an efficient way for storytellers to cover every shift of daylight. Either way, they're the crown jewels of the Olympian cousin crew. As you wander further, Hermes darts past, a blur of winged sandals and mischief. He tosses you a grin as he goes. Don't stand still too long. Someone might turn you into a statue for aesthetics. He's the messenger of the gods, patron of travelers, thieves, and clever excuses. If Olympus had a social media manager, it would be him. Hermes invented diplomacy, trade, and probably sarcasm. You catch glimpses of him everywhere, in marketplaces, crossroads, even at the boundary between life and death, guiding souls with a wink and a whistle. Then there's Aphrodite, emerging from a mist of roses and perfume, trailing laughter and sighs. She's technically Zeus's relative by marriage, but behaves as if she owns the place. Born from sea foam, or from the remnants of Uranus's unfortunate accident, depending on which version you prefer, Aphrodite embodies beauty and desire itself. Even the gods can't resist her influence, though some try. Athena claims immunity, and Artemis flat out refuses to participate. Ares doesn't even pretend to resist. You watch Aphrodite pass Ares in the hall, and the temperature rises a few metaphorical degrees. Their affair is no secret. In fact, it's practically dinner entertainment for the other gods. At one point, Hephaestus, Aphrodite's husband, caught them in an invisible net and invited the entire pantheon to witness their embarrassment. Historians still argue whether that story was a cautionary fable about infidelity or just the world's oldest soap opera. And beyond them, countless minor gods orbit: the Muses, who inspire artists; Nike, who grants victory; Hebe, the cupbearer of youth; and even the Graces, who sprinkle charm wherever they go. Olympus is a crowded apartment complex of divinity, and no one's security deposit is safe. A quirky tidbit for your sleepy brain. Ancient poets sometimes claim that Mount Olympus wasn't a physical mountain at all, but a hidden dimension, visible only to gods, vibrating just above mortal sight, which means, theoretically, it could be right above you now, humming softly like a frequency you almost hear when you're half asleep. You wander through the main hall as night settles. The gods lounge around, arguing about mortal wars, art, and who deserves more temples. Ares complains that philosophers never sacrifice enough goats. Apollo insists music is better than blood. Hermes votes for commerce. Zeus interrupts with thunder just to remind everyone he's still in charge. Through it all, you sense a pattern. Every debate, every rivalry, every spark of divine ego keeps the cosmos turning. The family tree might look tangled, but each branch balances the other. You step out onto a balcony, feeling the wind cool your face. The stars shimmer in the distance, and you realize that each one might be a god's echo, a myth's punctuation mark, a memory of divine quarrels now turned to light. And beneath that celestial glow, mortals continue building temples, writing hymns, falling in love, and blaming the gods for their bad decisions. The cousins of Olympus laugh, bicker, and scheme, unaware, or maybe completely aware, that they are the reflection of everything human. You take one last look at them, the boisterous family of divinity, and you can't help but smile. The gods might have stopped waging cosmic wars, but they've clearly replaced them with office politics. You descend the marble steps again, this time not down to the underworld or sea, but toward the quiet realm where gods and mortals mix, a hazy borderland of fields, temples, and chance encounters. It's the place where myths get messy. You know the type. Divine one-night stands, heroic bloodlines, monsters who call themselves half something, like they're trying to sound humble. Here, in the dim of evening, the air feels heavier, full of stories layered like old quilts. The Olympian family tree, once a proud pillar of godly hierarchy, now looks more like a web that's been enthusiastically stepped on. You walk through it carefully, the threads shimmering with names: Heracles, Perseus, Helen, Theseus, all those children born from divine interference and questionable consent forms. First comes Perseus, the golden boy with a sword, shield, and tragic backstory. Zeus, of course, couldn't resist visiting his mother Danae in the form of a golden rain, because apparently that counts as romance when you're immortal. Perseus grows up, kills Medusa, rescues Andromeda, and politely forgets his complicated family origins. Historians still argue whether Perseus's tale was meant as propaganda for noble bloodlines or simply an early superhero prototype. Either way, you can't deny the pattern. Divine DNA equals endless drama. Next, you wander toward a hilltop where Heracles, Hercules to the Romans, paces like a restless storm. Son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Alcmene, he's the poster child for divine overachievement. You watch him heft his club and sigh. His 12 labors stretch before him like the world's most unreasonable chore list. Kill the Nemean lion, clean the Augean stables, fetch apples guarded by dragons, and please, no skipping steps. But behind every feat is Hera's jealousy, whispering curses into his mortal life. She's still furious about her husband's infidelities, and poor Heracles becomes the lightning rod for her rage. It's tragic, yes, but also weirdly domestic, like cosmic passive aggression taken to Olympian levels. A quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe Heracles was originally a god of storms before mythology demoted him to a muscle-bound hero. You imagine him sighing about that at divine family gatherings. I used to be weather, now I'm just chores. Further down the lineage, Theseus strides through a labyrinth in your imagination, guided by a thread from Ariadne and the faint smell of Mediterranean salt. Another mortal-born son of Poseidon, or maybe Aegeus. Paternity tests weren't exactly reliable back then. Theseus defeats the Minotaur and forgets to change his ship's sails, accidentally killing his own father through grief. You exhale. Greek heroes really need better communication skills. Even Helen of Troy fits into this sprawling genealogy, the face that launched 1,000 ships, daughter of Zeus and Leda. Depending on who's telling it, Zeus visited her mother as a swan, a choice that still raises eyebrows in every retelling. Helen's beauty, her half-divine glow, becomes the spark of war. You can almost hear the gods sighing. Again, a family argument spills over into mortal politics. You move quietly through this half-divine crowd, noting how every child of the gods mirrors their parents' flaws. The heroes inherit strength, yes, but also pride, temper, and tragic fates. You can't help but think the Olympians have turned humanity into their therapy group, projecting, punishing, and occasionally rewarding. Somewhere, in a sunlit glade, the demigoddess Atalanta races through the grass. Born of mortal parents but blessed by Artemis, she swore never to marry unless bested in a race. Dozens of suitors tried and failed until Hippomenes used golden apples from Aphrodite to distract her. You smile faintly. Even here, divine meddling sneaks in, a love story rigged by celestial sponsorship. Historians still argue whether Atalanta represents early feminist independence or a warning against challenging patriarchal myth. Either way, she runs faster than anyone else in this tangled world, and that feels worth celebrating. The pattern keeps repeating, mortals and gods, collisions of desire and destiny. Each myth feels like a ripple from Olympus, stretching down into human history. The gods create heroes, heroes create legends, legends create cultures, and somewhere behind it all, Zeus probably grins. You pause at a quiet spring where a shepherd hums to himself. His name is Pan, half goat, half man, entirely chaotic. A child of Hermes, he lives on the edges of the divine family tree, the branch that never got pruned. Pan's wild laughter echoes through the valley, part joy, part terror. It's said that when his voice carried too far, mortals invented the word panic, a quirky, delightful inheritance for a god who prefers playing the flute to politics. Then there's Dionysus, born from Zeus and a mortal woman, Semele, who made the fatal mistake of asking to see Zeus's true form. That didn't end well for her, but Zeus rescued the unborn Dionysus by sewing him into his thigh. Yes, you heard that right. Zeus's leg became a temporary womb. Historians still argue whether this bizarre birth myth represents ancient fertility rites or just a particularly creative storytelling moment over too much wine. Either way, Dionysus grows up to embody joy, chaos, and theater. He blurs the line between divine ecstasy and mortal madness. The demigods multiply. Achilles, son of Thetis and a mortal king, strides across the battlefield of Troy, his mother dipping him in the river Styx to make him nearly invincible. Nearly being the operative word. His vulnerable heel reminds you that no divine favor is ever perfect. There's always a clause in the cosmic contract. You notice that mortals too begin adopting divine habits, arrogance, ambition, a touch of dramatic flair. Maybe that's the real inheritance. Humanity itself becomes an extension of Olympus, replaying divine quarrels at smaller scales, cities instead of heavens, leaders instead of gods. The boundary blurs so completely that the old myths start to sound like family gossip. A soft breeze stirs as the world of heroes fades into the age of poets and philosophers. The gods still whisper, but mortals are learning to think for themselves. The divine bloodlines dilute, stories become metaphors, and the family tree starts shedding leaves. Yet each myth, each messy affair, lingers in your mind like candle smoke. You picture a vast tapestry stretched across time, threads of gold and bronze, human and divine. Every knot, every twist tells of love, pride, jealousy, or destiny. The gods may not be perfect parents, but they've left their mark in every mortal heart that dares to dream of something larger. As you sit on a hill overlooking the sleeping world, the constellations shimmer overhead. You can almost trace the family tree in the stars, Perseus's sword, Heracles' lion, even the faint curve of Helen's swan. The sky itself has become their scrapbook, a cosmic family album too vast to ever finish. You sigh, feeling the warmth of myth settle into quiet wonder. The Olympian blood may have thinned, but its stories remain, woven into art, memory, and that strange human ache for meaning. You sit beneath that cosmic scrapbook of constellations, and for a moment you think the stars themselves are whispering names: Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo, each fading a little softer, a little further away. The age of the gods is waning. Their temples, once bright with fire and song, now gather moss and silence. The marble cracks, the gold flakes away. But if you listen closely, the stories still hum beneath it all, like embers refusing to die. You drift through a landscape caught between memory and myth. Somewhere, a half-broken column leans against the dusk. Once it marked the entrance to a temple of Poseidon, now it shelters birds who couldn't care less about divine genealogies. You run your hand along the stone. It's warm from the sun, cool underneath, like a relic holding two eras at once. The Olympians don't vanish all at once. They fade quietly, slipping into metaphor and legend. Mortals begin to speak their names not as deities, but as ideas. Athena becomes wisdom itself. Apollo turns into the symbol of art, clarity, and reason. Aphrodite survives as love, ever-changing but impossible to erase. Zeus still lingers too, but more as a concept of fate or sky, less as a thunder-throwing patriarch. The mortals he once ruled now tell stories about him the way you might talk about a childhood teacher, strict, occasionally kind, but firmly retired. You wander the ruins of Delphi, that oracle once famous for its smoke-laced prophecies. The wind snakes through broken pillars, carrying the faint scent of laurel and old incense. Historians still argue whether the oracle's visions came from divine intervention or volcanic fumes beneath the earth. Either way, the air feels thick with memory. You almost expect to hear a whisper, "Know thyself." It's poetic, really. The gods once told humans what to do. Now, the humans interpret the gods to understand themselves. The family tree turns inward, branching not across heaven but inside the human mind. Some say that when people stopped believing in Olympus, the gods simply transformed. Hades became the shadow in every myth of the afterlife. Demeter lived on in the turning of seasons. Dionysus found a home in every glass of wine raised in celebration. The gods didn't die. They dissolved into human experience, spreading thin but wide like dew at dawn. A quirky little tidbit floats up from your sleepy brain. During the later Roman Empire, some scholars genuinely tried to map the entire divine genealogy, complete with charts, connecting minor river spirits to major Olympians. The result looked less like a tree and more like a tangle of spaghetti annotated in Latin. It's comforting to know even ancient scholars couldn't make total sense of the family. As the world turns modern, the gods lose their temples, but gain new kinds of worship: paintings, plays, poems, and bedtime stories like this one. They migrate into art galleries and university lectures. Even now, their symbols sneak into brand logos and constellations, a wink from eternity. You picture them resting somewhere unseen, Zeus dozing on a cloud recliner, Hera finally reading the scroll she never had time for, Athena calmly organizing the divine archives. Maybe Hermes runs a courier service for lost dreams. Maybe Poseidon has switched careers and now manages coral reefs. Historians still argue whether myths fade or evolve, but you suspect the gods simply learned to whisper instead of shout. The family tree stands, even if you can't see it clearly anymore. Its roots reach through the soil of imagination. Its branches stretch across every culture touched by Greek thought. It's vast, unruly, and somehow comforting, proof that stories never die. They just grow quieter with time. You take one last slow breath of mythic air. The stars above you pulse faintly, almost like breathing. You imagine each light as one divine ancestor, glowing not with power, but with memory. You can't tell where the gods end and you begin. Maybe that's the point. The world hums. The fan you turned on earlier merges with the sound of the Aegean surf, the rustle of olive leaves, the soft patter of sandals fading down a marble corridor. You're surrounded by echoes, family feuds, miracles, laughter, the long sigh of immortals growing tired of eternity. They're still out there, somewhere, half asleep themselves, watching the mortals they once shaped. And if you ever look up at the night sky and catch a flicker just slightly brighter than the rest, maybe that's one of them, checking in, making sure the story's still being told. Because it is. You've carried it with you, all the way from chaos to here. The gods murmur their final goodnight, and Olympus folds itself back into the dark. The stars blink slower now. The myths loosen their grip. You feel yourself drifting, your breath sinking with that ancient rhythm, the endless rise and fall of creation, of memory, of dreams. And as your eyes grow heavier, you realize the family tree was never meant to be understood. It was meant to be felt, a soft, tangled cradle for humanity's oldest lullabies. Sleep now under the same sky they once ruled. The story will wait for you when you wake. The night stretches long and calm, like a page that's finally reached its end. You lie still, feeling the weight of centuries ease off your shoulders, the voices of gods fading into the hush of distant surf. Every sound softens, the faint hum of your fan, the quiet ticking of a clock, the slow rhythm of your breathing. Let the marble temples dissolve. Let the thunder quiet. Even Olympus must rest. The stories have been told, and they no longer need your full attention, just the gentle awareness that they exist, timeless, waiting. You picture the gods asleep, Zeus dreaming of endless skies, Hera surrounded by gentle stars, Athena closing her eyes on a scroll of forgotten wisdom. Down below, the sea glimmers faintly where Poseidon hums a lullaby only the tides understand. Every myth, every divine quarrel, every shimmering thread of history settles into stillness. You are safe here, inside this soft twilight between memory and sleep. The family tree fades to silver mist. Its branches cradle you, rocking you slowly. You are neither mortal nor god, just a quiet listener, floating in the space between stories.